So I just loaded up my palette with a wide range of cool colors, Anthraquinone blue, some teal, a wide variety of variations of those. And I'm just going to start bringing in some cooler colors with a liner brush. I've lost this swirling effect, and overall the colors are very pink and warm. So I'm just going to add a lot of marks, see if I can't cool part of this painting down. And I really like the colors when you overlap some of these teals over pinks. And of course it saves a lot of time when you aren't mixing all of your colors from scratch. You could theoretically make all of these colors just from yellow, blue, and white, but you'd spend a lot more time developing colors instead of painting with said colors. So I'm just being pretty sloppy because I don't want my marks to look too pristine. I want it to look very abstract with color fields, higher energy. The more pristine it looks, the more static it is, and then the more wild it looks, the more energy the image may have. So just gonna kind of explode some of this color outward. Anthraquinone blue by itself is really dark, so I'm going to lighten it up with one of the other blues. And I have no reason to ever clean my brush whenever I'm working with similar colors. So just laid my brush back into the water. Since I've deposited so many blobs, but earlier you may recall I was talking about variety of marks, and the majority of these marks, since they were made by the same brush, are all basically the same shape. So I'm going to go back in with the palette knife and find some of the thicker blobs of paint and kind of smash and pull to make larger marks. I'm not pressing down so that the blade touches the canvas. I'm just pressing down enough so that it presses the paint. So I want kind of broken smears where there are still skids, kind of like this. There we go. So now it created a much more abstract surface than all of the Van Gogh-like dashes that were previously there. This is a much more interesting color field as a result of being able to look at it and not see how it was made. It also makes it very difficult to replicate, even for me, because there's such an element of chance involved. All right, so right now it is purely abstract. Apart from the archway and the window through, this is not really anything. It's all about where it's going. So I still want to incorporate this stamp that says the greatest pleasure in life is doing what others say you cannot. We'll say that that is like going through a doorway that others think you can't go through. And I have this rusted wire, and I'm thinking about applying the rusted wire either radiating out from the door or in spirals, overlapping spirals. I haven't quite decided, but that's next on the list to work with. I do want to blow dry this first. As I was blow drying the painting so far, it's very wild and explosive, and I knew that I am eventually going to be adding some of the rusty wire, sculpturally creating some of these swirls. But I thought to myself, the rusty wire doesn't really have anything that is grounding it to the painting. It may just look like an applied object without anything that makes it more of a unified painting. So I got the idea that before I'm going to lay this down, I'm going to gold leaf the area under it so that it will, even though it's a rusty wire, light will reflect off the gold leaf and it will come back at the viewer in a way that may look like there's a halo effect around the wire. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use some gold leaf adhesive size, and I'm going to paint this on just following my previous lines that I use to create, oh, and I think I went backwards. Oh well, gotta go with it now. And it goes on milky, and it may not be ready for gilding or applying the gold leaf for up to 60 minutes. So it's not a rushed, this is not a rushed process. It's more relaxed. I'm going to start to break the line here because I don't want it to be so constant. Now I'll do the other one. Let's see. Now this one went clockwise, so I want this one to go counterclockwise, just so that it's not so symmetrical. Counterclockwise needs to go that way. About 45 minutes have passed, so I'm confident that the adhesive size should be ready to go. So I'm just going to pull out some gold flakes. I have some sheets, but I don't want to use a whole sheet on something so thin. So I also have these flakes, which are a better value in that you get a lot more for the same price. So I'm just going to lay this down. So the way gold leaf works is that everywhere it touches the adhesive size, it sticks. And any of the gold leaf that is not touching adhesive size, it's going to get brushed away. So as you can see, it's going on, and it is not refined yet. It's just blobs of gold leaf. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to press it down. Anything that comes up was never touching any adhesive. And just in case my hand is too much friction, I'm going to use a soft watercolor mop brush just to gently brush away the gold leaf that is not adhered. And there we are. I'm going to move on to this wire. So I have a few different small tools that I could use. These are just wire cutters. These are toothed flat pliers that could be used. But the reason you wouldn't generally want to use something like this is because when you bend the wire, if you're trying to, in this case, make a smooth bend, this is going to make little angles. Every time that I turn it, it's going to bend at an angle. Whereas using smooth, round jewelry pliers, it's going to bend without crimping. It'll be easier to make a round curve with these wires, with these pliers. Cut it there. Now to apply it. So what I've decided to use is some heavy gel medium. So all I'm going to do is pick a few places where I want it to adhere to the canvas, and maybe just like this one is sticking up off of the canvas, I might even have them become more 3D. So I'm going to remove the wires, and using a thin palette knife, grab a scoop. And I'm not going to flatten it. I want it to be dimensional so that the wire has something to stick to. And it basically be pressed into, rather. And anywhere this gel is placed on top of the gold leaf, it will make it no longer shiny. So now that I have 1, 2, 3 points of contact here, 1, 2, 3 globs. Here I have 1, 2 globs, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I'm going to adhere each one. So as you can see, I have these really big blobs that are going to be visible in the end, but as a redeeming idea, it occurred to me that while this is still wet, I can gold leaf that. I can stick gold leaf to it so that it will not just be some piece that's purely functional, I'm going to make that decorative and therefore also make this whole wire addition more mysterious in that it will hide how it's stuck on there. Whereas if I don't put gold leaf on there, it would be very obvious how it was applied. So I'm going to grab some of this excess leaf. So I've zoomed you in right down to the bottom left. Have my ink pad, my stamp. Well, if I'm going for subtle, I think that I achieved it. That's the redeeming factor of this blooper. But all right, so as a result, I think I'm going to use a white, maybe I'll just take the phrase or take part of a phrase and write something in here. This said, the greatest pleasure in life is doing what others say you cannot. Let's see, I'll take that inspiration. So I've gone back over the words a number of times with this Sharpie paint pen. To intensify drawing the eye into the words, I'm going to darken this edge. And to do that, I'm going to use one of my favorite colors to darken the edge, and that is Golden Brand Paynes Gray. There we are. So complementary colors have a very high contrast and therefore they're very high energy whenever you combine one over the other. So the opposite of blue is orange. So this yellow-orange Diarylide yellow is going to have a lot of energy when sitting on top of a blue background.